Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for joining me for the video today. In it, I wanted to look at some of the top quarterbacks taken now that the 2022 NFL Draft is officially over. So in today's video, we are going to answer the question, which 2022 rookie quarterbacks are most set up for success, both in the short term and in the long term. But before we get into that, if you guys are new to the channel, welcome. Please consider giving me a like and subscribe. Your support means so very much to me. It helps me out a ton. I cannot thank you guys enough. To all my current subscribers out there, thank you, thank you, thank you. With that done, let's get into this version of Hot Off the Press. So I'm going to start at what I think might be the worst possible fits and work my way to the #1 landing spot. So at 6, I have Desmond Ridder. Now he was drafted 74th overall in the 3rd round by Atlanta. And for me, it's really interesting that the Falcons went with Ridder here while Malik Willis was still available. The value here though is very solid. Ridder was ranked as the 43rd overall prospect heading into the draft by ESPN. He was 44-6 as a starter at Cincinnati, so that winning mentality is something he is going to bring, and Lord knows Atlanta could use a winner after that bumpy couple of seasons that they have had to suffer through. Now his skill set, it does match a lot of what Marcus Mariota does, so I believe that might have been the reason that Atlanta went Ridder here instead of Willis. I don't love it, but I do understand it. Ridder is going to have the ability to sit and learn behind an NFL vet in the same mold, which could work wonders for his development early on in his career. He has the skills as well to push Mariota sooner rather than later. Now, I am not sure that he wants to do that though, as Atlanta has a decent but certainly not spectacular group of playmakers. Kyle Pitts was about as advertised as a rookie tight end could possibly be. He was fantastic, and that at the tight end position is extremely rare. But unless big-bodied wideout Drake London, the rookie out of USC, can make an immediate impact on the roster, the wide receiver core here is still among the league's worst. Now, we're also going to add in the fact that they have a first-time offensive coordinator in Dave Ragone. He was the quarterback coach in Chicago for 4 years. That was from 2016 to 2019. And then he was the passing game coordinator last year. And the Bears offense hasn't exactly set the world on fire recently either. It is clear a slower initiation to the league is the ideal path for him to take. The issue that I really have here is that I am skeptical about the surroundings here in Atlanta with a clearly rebuilding franchise, and Ridder's landing spot certainly could have been better. At the 5 spot, I have Sam Howell, who was drafted 144th overall in the 5th round by Washington. The Commanders needed someone behind Carson Wentz. I think that's pretty obvious, so good on them for being able to pick up Howell almost 100 picks off his projected value. The 50th ranked prospect heading into the draft, especially at a quarterback, is a steal in the 5th round. Howell probably has the best deep ball accuracy of any quarterback in the 2022 class, and that meshes with Terry McLaurin on the outside. The running game here in Washington is solid, and the offensive line was a top 7 unit in 2021, and that's going to make things much easier for him should he be pressed into action early. Now, I do find that highly unlikely because the Commanders paid a very steep price to bring Wentz in and are among only a handful of teams in the league that probably see him as a viable starting option. Howell probably has a couple of years here to learn the system, and with the continuity with Scott Turner as the offensive coordinator, that is going to help him a lot. After seeing the development of Taylor Heineke last year really kind of broke out, at least in spurts, I have some faith that Washington can make it work with Howell. It is a solid fit and landing spot for the Tar Heel. I have Bailey Zappe at my 4th spot. He was drafted 137th overall in the 4th round by New England. My first question here would be, why is New England drafting a backup after taking Mac Jones last year? It seems, at face value at least, like a wasted pick, but you can't really get upset when you're matched with Bill Belichick. Zappe is going to be able to learn in an extremely QB-friendly offense and he's gonna have zero pressure on him, which is gonna help him out tremendously. He did come from a small school in Western Kentucky, and he's gonna have plenty of time to adapt that game to the NFL level. While his arm strength is perhaps a bit in question, his production in college was undeniable. It pretty much works out perfectly that Zappe is not gonna have to start right away, or maybe ever, in New England. The offensive line in New England lost a lot this season, is likely gonna take a step back, though it is still pretty solid. The weapons at Zappe's disposal would be far from ideal, however, particularly in that passing game where New England lacks a true number one receiving threat. Now, I think Devontae Parker coming in is gonna help a bit, at least if he can stay healthy, and that's a big if. And Kendrick Bourne did flash, at least towards the end of last season, but Jacoby Myers, who is excellent as a possession receiver, doesn't move the needle a whole lot. Nelson Agholor was a 2020 free agency bust, and that is why the ground game in New England is so important, and Mac Jones, we saw take full advantage of that last year. That being said, I really do like the fit for Bailey Zappe here a lot, even if it was questionable to bring him in the first place. A question that came to mind for me was, is this potentially a Jimmy Garoppolo 2.0 situation, where the Patriots draft and groom a young quarterback before trading him away in a couple years for a more prime pick? It worked once, so maybe it'll work again. New England did get a second-round pick in return for trading Jimmy G, so if they can pull that kind of a deal off, this one will look genius. To 3, and we have Matt Corral, who was drafted 94th overall in the 3rd round by the Carolina Panthers. I suppose you could really look at it and say, did Carolina miss an opportunity to trade up instead of taking the scraps at what was left at the quarterback position? Now, for me, I'm not sure that that was the case. Corral was ranked as the number 47 overall prospect going into the draft. To get him exactly twice as late as that seems like a steal, and he could have been their guy all along. We probably will never know. He has an extremely quick release, and he excels in the short to intermediate passing game, and that is exactly what Carolina likes to run anyway. He excels at creating run after the catch opportunities for his receivers. This is going to align perfectly with the weapons that Carolina has, and it is just about as an ideal fit as possible. With his dual threat ability and arm strength, he could push Sam Darnold sooner rather than later for that starting gig, which is something that I believe Carolina coveted in this draft. And after what we saw last year, they are clearly not comfortable with Darnold having no competition at the position. And after playing in some big games in college, in the toughest division in college football in the SEC, the NFL transition could really come smoothly to Corral a lot more than other rookie quarterbacks. It also helps that as a 3rd round pick and near the end of the round 2, the pressure is not going to be on him to step up right away. The weapons around him are going to help him immensely as well, with the game's best dual running back threat, at least when healthy, and DJ Moore on the outside. He has a pair of elite options. Now, I know that Robbie Anderson had a down year in 2021, but he has still shown himself to be more than capable recently. A potential breakout from second-year wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr. would be huge for this offense, though I would say at this point that seems unlikely. Now, the scariest thing for any young quarterback is a poor offensive line. Carolina's is going to be helped greatly by number 6 overall pick Ikem Ekwonu, though they're still going to probably fall to the bottom half of the league in 2022, so it's not all roses in front of Corral. Still, I believe that this was a solid pick for Carolina, and Corral truly has an opportunity to succeed. Just missing my top spot. In at number 2, I have Kenny Pickett, who was drafted 20th overall in the 1st round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, he was the first quarterback taken in 2022. He's an excellent fit in this offense. His upside has been heavily debated, but the thought here and the consensus was that Pickett was the safe pick among the options at quarterback this year, and I would agree with that assessment. My concerns here are fairly simple. The pressure that comes from being a 1st round pick, and not only that, but the number 1 quarterback off of the board, and the situation in front of him with Mitch Trubisky is only going to exasperate that. There are likely going to be Steelers fans calling for Pickett to be thrown into the fire early, particularly if Chubb struggles, and that is never an enviable position. The offensive line, which was absolutely putrid in 2021, certainly does not help. Now, outside of that, though, things are roses for Pickett, who will have the opportunity to learn in the most stable place of all quarterbacks drafted this year. Pittsburgh's continuity is gonna help Kenny a ton, and the weapons surrounding him will as well. Najee Harris lightens the load not only as a runner, but as a pass catcher too, and you have both Pat Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson. They are rising stars in the league at their respective positions. Now, I'm not exactly sold on Matt Canada's ability as an offensive coordinator just yet, but I do believe at least some, and I would say probably most, of the offensive inadequacies in 2021 can be blamed on the limp noodle, also known as Big Ben's throwing arm. Best case scenario, Trubisky does exactly what he was brought in to do: manage the offense, not make critical errors, and hit a big throw or two when the Steelers need them. This would allow a year or two for Pickett to learn the ropes, which may not be necessary, but it would certainly help him out a ton. I do think, though, that Kenny Pickett has a chance to start in week 1, but even as the most pro-ready out of all the 2022 quarterback prospects, I believe it is best to slow his development if possible. If it all unravels early on, though, do not expect the Steelers to take my advice on that. They expect a winner in Pittsburgh. Now, this is almost a perfect match, and only one is going to be better, and that is my top-ranked quarterback from the 2022 class. Which brings us to Malik Willis, drafted 86th overall in the 3rd round by Tennessee. Now, Willis was clearly a polarizing prospect. Some had him as a top 25 talent that would go in the 1st round, while clearly others had him much farther down the list. I can see both sides of the argument, but I still cannot believe that he fell to the middle of the 3rd round. For my full takes on both Willis and Pickett, make sure you check out my comparison video that I did early on last week. Now, what makes me love Willis is his upside. He has the traits to be a star in this league if, and I would say granted it is a big if, he can put it all together. The best part about his landing spot in Tennessee is that he's going to have the ability to try and do just that. Ryan Tannehill is a solid, if unspectacular, option in front of him, and he is signed through 2023 because his 2024 and 25 seasons automatically void. So that gives 2 full years for Willis to learn, to grow, and to develop. Those are 2 years that he sorely needs, as he is as raw as it gets when it comes to the cerebral aspect of the game. And who better to teach him than a staff that took Ryan Tannehill from a cast-off bust to a quarterback that was capable of getting a number 1 seed in the conference. New offensive coordinator Todd Downing may concern some, but he was a quarterback coach for Derek Carr when he had that epic 2015 season. He went from a question mark quarterback to a borderline top 10 player at the position, and Carr has not dropped off since. Tennessee is also going to be very heavily invested in getting the most out of Willis, and I believe this move was made because they realized that Tannehill has probably hit his ceiling and might not be able to push them over the top in an ever-growing competitive AFC. Without any pressure of having to step in right away, Willis can laser focus on the aspects of his games that he needs to improve. I think the lack of distractions here is going to be invaluable to him, and these factors set him up to have the most success out of any of the quarterbacks drafted in 2022. And with that, I will bid you all farewell until we meet again. Thank you guys for joining me for today's video. I really hope you learned something and you enjoyed the content. If you're new to the channel, if you haven't done it yet, for whatever reason, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. Your support means the world to me. It helps me out a ton and it enables me to do what I love. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abraham Opatz, and we'll see you next time.